Okay, it is now 2 o'clock, and so I resume the hearing. I will just wait a moment for those that couldn't tear themselves away from their sandwiches. Okay, I think I have resumed. I think everyone else, more or less at least, is now back. Yeah, so yes, as I think we've established, I think that now, frankly, the discussion is moving on from B and C, and quite firmly overlapping with D. If anyone else had anything else to say that is explicitly about B or C, I'll hear those points now. But otherwise, I'll hear from the council and then go on to D. So I've got two indications. These are explicitly on B and C. Ms. Cottier.
Hello, my camera is playing up again. Never mind. So I think I can probably fit what I've got to say into the last one. So if we're going to do 24E, I probably can leave it till then if it relates to that.
Yeah, that's fine. If it fits better under D or E, that's
fine. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Dorman.
Thank you. Yes, mine's just a point of clarification, I think, in reference to Mr. Bedford this morning, referring to the fact that the North Houghton Regis site had been evaluated in the growth options study, and he directed you towards figure 2.2 of that study. That figure shows a map of the Luton and wider area called potential growth locations. And on that map in blue are those allocations that are being studied in the growth option study. So those from L1 to L31. On the map around Houghton Regis, there is a chunk of land coloured yellow, not blue, that is described as a committed housing site. It is not specifically identified as North Houghton Regis, and as such, as it's not got an L number and is not coloured blue, was not included in the growth option study for any examination whatsoever among any one of those 31 sites that the study considered. Now, I don't know why it's there. It may be that it's been reserved perhaps by Central Beds for future housing. I just don't know. But I am clear that it was not part of the growth option study. And in any event, the first notification I can see of North Houghton Regis being put forward by Central Beds as a site to meet Luton's unmet needs was their Exam 41, which was submitted to North Herts District Council in November 2019, 3 years later. So that's just for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anyone else explicitly on questions B or C then, before I look to the council for its final word, and we can move squarely then onto question D. Okay, is that for you then, Mr. Smith? You're muted, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Apologies. Yes, I think in fairness, we probably don't have much of a final word on B and C. We've made our points on that obviously at the outset, and I think as you've correctly identified, a lot of the points really raised around having regard to up-to-date information really go to your question D. Just sort of one point of clarification on the Houghton Regis point, given it's come up and we'll cover it again anyway, is the reference has been made to exam 41, the Central Bedfordshire document, and just to confirm that the council was aware of it and did have regard to it in our ED 173 paper. It is in fact appended to that paper, and it formed part of our deliberations. So if you'd like me to move on to D, obviously at the time you asked that question back in early in the new year when we did our statements, we obviously referred you back again to ED 173, which gives quite a lot of explanation and information as to sort of what's gone on subsequent to the growth study, particularly in Central Bedfordshire. But rather than going through that, given several people have referenced to it, it's probably best to jump to sort of ED 207, because that is the latest current up-to-date position of Central Bedfordshire as presented to their examination.
What's ED 207? Is that
That's the note from Central Bedfordshire on their current position in relation to meeting unmet needs and supply in their area, or allocations in their area, sorry.
Right, okay, it's, yeah.
Because long story short, that position has changed slightly from what was in exam 41. So I think it's best that we have regard to this. And if you look on the second page at table 1, there's
on the first page there, we've got a list of sites proposed through the Central Bedfordshire plan,
yeah,
with new sites, i.e. sites presumably coming in through main modifications shown in red. Is that right?
Well, I think they are sites that were in the plan anyway. They are now changing how they're articulating Luton's unmet need will be met. But you're right, it'll be through a main modification. So yes, in this context, they're being brought in.
Right, okay, yeah.
And if we jump down to the bottom of that additional text onto the second page, on page 2 at table 1, they've identified the number of homes they expect to be delivered by 2031, which is obviously the Luton plan period. And that totals 8,280. Which obviously on the face of it is slightly higher than their agreed share of the unmet need. But so I'm jumping you around, if we go back onto the first page of that note.
And I do note that includes the Houghton Regis.
Yes.
North sites.
Yeah.
Okay, you're taking me back up to the previous page.
And in the text, it's the 5th paragraph of their note, which begins therefore, that I'm going to look at specifically.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps it's just easiest to read it in full. Therefore, in order to reflect the fact that the OAN for Luton should ideally be met within the HMA, all proposed allocations that fall within the HMA have been added to the list. This reflects the fact that any of these sites could be attributed to meeting this need, which is the unmet need, as well as the needs of Central Bedfordshire. and also provides maximum flexibility. So I think that's an important point in relation to the latest position, that Central Bedfordshire are now identifying all of the allocations that they are proposing in the HMA as potentially meeting Luton's unmet need. Which first of all goes to the point raised this morning, that obviously that relies on a range of sites and locations, some of which are located physically very close to Luton, such as the Houghton Regis site and SA1, the north of Luton site. But it also relies on sites, obviously, in the other settlements, the towns and villages that are less well related to Luton. And I think the second point is to consider where that leaves Central Bedfordshire in terms of meeting their own needs within the HMA, in addition to Luton's unmet needs. Because, as I said this morning, obviously once you get into Central Bedfordshire, which covers quite a reasonable proportion of their authority area, you can't really completely divorce the two. They've got to consider how they're meeting their needs as well as Luton's unmet needs.
Yeah, I'd quite like to divorce the two a little bit. I don't want to go very far at all in terms of Central Bedfordshire's needs being met for obvious reasons.
No, I understand that. All I was going to do is set out what we consider to be the total needs they are aiming to meet in that area. So the unmet need plus their own needs, and what is approximately their supply based on this latest note, just so you can have regards to that fact in considering this reasonable alternatives point. And I think that's probably best done by reference to the table underneath paragraph 58 of ED 173, or paragraph 58 itself.
Bear with me. Yeah.
So on the need side, you can see there in paragraph 58, and it's referenced elsewhere, we talk about there being a need for 13,400 homes within Central Bedfordshire over the period 2011 to 2031. And if we add to that Central Bedfordshire's agreed share of the unmet need from Luton, which is 7,350 homes, there's a total need they're looking to address of 20,750 homes. I'm giving you those figures, so they're, other than the 13,400, they're not specifically in that table. I'm just setting a context.
Right, okay. So yeah, sorry, my apologies then. Could you run that past me again?
So in paragraph 58, we identify there is a need arising from that part of Central Bedfordshire within the Luton HMA of 13,400 homes.
Yeah.
And elsewhere in ED 173 and across the evidence base, we know that Central Bedfordshire's share of the unmet need from Luton is 7,350 homes.
Yeah.
Which gives a total need of 20,750.
Yeah.
And then in terms of supply, if we look at that table under paragraph 58, I'd say to you the first 3 lines on that are effectively unchanged. Completions, windfalls, commitments.
Yeah.
If we're looking at those 2 elements of need combined, we now have a proposed allocation figure as set out in ED 207 of 8,280 homes.
Yeah.
And so if we add those elements together, as I say, substituting in the 8280 as proposed allocations.
Yeah.
There is a total supply, or indicative supply, I guess, within central Bedfordshire to meet those combined needs of 15,100 homes against a need of 20,750.
Sorry, 15,000.
100. Now, as you say, sir, the appropriateness of Central Bedfordshire's spatial strategy is very much for their examination. But in the context of this examination, the only point we would make is obviously central beds are not meeting those needs in full within the housing market area. Obviously, some are presumably being sold elsewhere in the district to other housing market areas. And in that sense, any sites which are put to you as preferable or additional sites would merely reduce that shortfall. They wouldn't result in a need to replace or remove the East of Luton sites.
So sorry, sir, can I just come in here? So can I just ask Mr. Smith a question? So Mr. Smith, on that basis, and so we've got a careful note of that, would it be sensible for the inspector to write in that table under paragraph 58, alongside the figure 774, the figure 8,280, with a reference to ED 207, so that when we come back to look at these documents, we've got the total picture?
Yes, it would for the moment. It might be that we can just put that in a single page note for you, because we can just update the title of the table to show that it covers both elements of the need.
Would that be helpful, sir, if we effectively give you a replacement table in the light of the up-to-date information that we've had from Central Beds?
Yeah, yes, that would help. Yes, it would make sure that I didn't forget.
Indeed, that's the only point. So we've got so many documents. It's quite an important point, and it would just be, we just want to make sure that you've got it in an accessible place. So we'll produce a replacement table for you. Thank you, sir.
Grateful.
And so obviously just to finish up on that point, and obviously to go back with reference to your question D, without the East of Luton sites, therefore, no, we do not think there are realistic alternative options with a reasonable likelihood of being delivered once you take in mind the approach being taken in the Central Bedfordshire local plan and the current position in relation to the examination of that plan. And that's, even notwithstanding the representations of Mr. Boyd regarding West of Luton.
Thank you. Mr. Boyd. You're on mute, Mr. Boyd.
Apologies, sir. Missed the other button there. So it's just really in response to Mr. Smith's point about the updated evidence from Central Beds, the ED 207 document. And I wanted to come back just very briefly, without labouring the point too much, about the importance of meeting Luton's unmet needs close to where the need arises. And so I've not been involved in the examination before, as you know, and you may already have this reference anyway, but or you may not. But where that comes from, sir, and stop me if you already know this, is from the adopted Luton local plan. I don't know if you're aware of that, sir, and it's at paragraph 4.8 of that plan. And for the benefit of those that haven't got that document in front of them, would you mind if I just read it out? It's only a short paragraph. It says, the Borough Council considers that the interest of the town and sustainability would best be served by meeting Luton's unmet housing needs as close as possible to the communities from which the need arises. And it says, indeed, under the duty to cooperate and in response to neighbouring plan preparation, particular account should be taken of this council's policy supporting development to the west of Luton and requesting a thorough examination of strategic cross-boundary options around the town, i.e. that an assessment of options north, east, south and west of Luton should be examined. Now, obviously, we're not going back to the duty to cooperate issues because that's obviously been done, sir. But, and we've seen, obviously, we've heard from Mr. Smith today, we've seen from other commentators today that there's a general consensus that that is the correct approach in meeting Luton's unmet housing need. Then, so you've just been presented with ED 207 and you will get a table updating the evidence from the council. I'm very concerned about whether there's a genuine purpose in meeting Luton's unmet needs close to where the need arises, sir. And the reason why I say that is and this is obviously for central beds as much as for North Herts, but North Herts rely upon this evidence, and this is why I raise it, sir. In the table 1 in ED 207, which you've been referred to, which is the up-to-date list of sites that purport to meet Luton's needs, a significant number of those sites there are nowhere near Luton, And I've just done a very quick exercise while listening to Mr. Smith, looking at figure 2.2, which we've referred to before in the growth options study, which being the most handy plan to look at. And I don't know how familiar you are with Bedfordshire generally, sir, but places like Flitwick, which is obviously on the list twice, HAS 17 and 18, is a significant distance to the north of Luton. Toddington again, that's very remote from Luton as well. That's over to the northwest. Harlington, north again. Westerning, another sort of outreaching location. Again, just north of Harlington, that is. Even Barton-le-Clay, which obviously is going to put forward apparently nearly 500 houses for Luton's unmet needs, is a long way up the A6 and definitely remote from Luton again. And lastly, Malden, I've just picked out, is between Clop Hill and Amped Hill, which is at the northern boundary of central Bedfordshire. And I was quite encouraged by ED 173 in relation to the comments made at paragraph 19, sir, which talks about the risk of a domino effect, particularly in relation to affordable housing, where you effectively locate Luton's unmet housing need in locations remote from Luton. And then, of course, there'd be competing interests in terms of delivering that housing need, not just for the remainder of the Luton HMA falling within central Bedfordshire, but also the provision of affordable houses locally as well. So I feel as though there's a bit of smoke and mirrors going on here. And I know that Luton Borough Council are concerned about this point as well, but they can speak for themselves because it came out of their hearing statement. to this matter today. But I feel, sir, that this is not really, the evidence presented to you, sir, is not being genuinely put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cottier.
Thank you. Yeah, I also feel that the evidence is not genuinely being put forward as well. That is why yesterday I was talking about data as opposed to statements about data, actually producing and providing it so for all to see. And there was a conversation at the end of yesterday's afternoon session where you mentioned that in the statement of common ground that each party is going to produce, that they will include some type of data, and I was supposed to be providing corresponding data from this side. So that was on the request, I think, of what's his name, Mr. Williams, or Mr. Howell Williams, I think, asked for it. And yes, I agreed to produce it. So I want to know, what should I contain in that? Because if he wants me to provide that type of data as a part of our declaration of common ground that mirrors the declaration of common ground that you requested from the three authorities, will it be a sort of a table form? If he would like to tell me exactly what parts of the planning applications that I'm claiming are windfall sites and large developments that fall within Luton's own boundary and their sizes, and he wants the link, or does he want a big file of the planning documents, or does he want the actual PDFs, or shall I just give him the link to each planning application PDF and then tell him how big it is and what numbers there are and the name of it? So that will satisfy what he requests, and I will meet that need very, very accurately and thoroughly. And if they wish me to give input to their statement of common ground, or us to give input into their statement of common ground instead of providing a separate one, we don't mind to do that. Or if Nigel Smith wished to work together with, say, me and Nikki Hamilton to produce the list, all of us together, to pool our energies, to stop everybody doubling up doing the same task twice, we don't mind to do that either. So we're quite flexible.
Yeah,
so
okay.
We'll meet whatever anybody else wishes. We will meet the approach that the others wish to, how they wish to go about this. Just let us know, and we will oblige.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Ms. Cottier, and I'm sure Mr. Williams won't mind my saying that it's not so much about what he wants, but rather more about what I think I need to see. If I recall, that was more about more recent applications that had been considered by the authority, wasn't it? And the most useful thing to me would be a table, just be a very, very simple table, really, that perhaps usefully might have the name of the site, perhaps the planning application reference number,
Yep.
but most critically, really, to show what was permitted by the council, the number of homes in particular.
Distribution, would you like to know breakdown of the overall total? Because we discussed the issue of 1 bed, 2 beds, 3s, 4s, like that. We should, I think, break it down. Yes,
I see. Yeah. If there is anything specific in those planning permissions about that, then that would be useful for me to know too.
Okay, and do they want? Do you want us to go away and do that independently of their efforts, or would you like us to give ours as input to their efforts? I'm more than happy for that to be something that you do independently. Okay, we shall do it independently. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bedford.
Thank you, sir. So just briefly, for the benefit of your note, in relation to ED 207, without getting into the wheres and why-fors, but just taking what I think is the consensus view that provision to meet Luton's unmet needs ought to be provided as close as possible to where the needs arise. On our understanding of the sites in ED 207, it's the first 3 sites, Houghton Regis, and north of Luton, together with, I think it's HAS, is it 49? There's one more, which is a Houghton Regis site, slightly lower down the table. 29, I'm sorry, I apologise. If you total those 4 entries.
Sorry, that was SC1, wasn't it?
Yep.
HAS 29 I also got.
Yep.
But not the others.
Oh, sorry. So if you go back to the table,
yeah,
I'll just get it in front of me. Yeah, HRN1, HRN2, SA1. So that's the first 3 lines.
Bear with me. Yeah, I was looking at the list above rather than the table. So
oh, sorry, I was using the codes in the table, but it's the same. I'll go back to the red and black list.
No, that's fine. I'm with you at the table now.
Right. Okay. Right. Well, I'll drop down to the table. Thank you. So the first 3 lines, together with, as you drop down, HAS 29, which is described as land east of Houghton Regis. But if you just total those 4 entries,
yeah,
you come to a figure of 6259, which obviously is less than the 7,300, which is the central bed's contribution to the unmet needs. The other sites, which obviously are in that table, are sites which are clearly more remote from the built-up area of Luton. And that has not only sustainability implications, it has, as Mr. Boyd has already hinted at, affordable housing implications in terms of the delivery of affordable housing to meet those needs. And of course, it needs to be borne in mind that this is all on the assumption that there is built into those figures, just at that level, no flexibility, no buffer. And so I say, if you look at just the ones that relate actually to Luton, it's less than the central bed's contribution, which reinforces the point that we put in our earlier representation to you, that there is not a preferable and more suitable alternative lying somewhere within central beds in preference to east of Luton.
Just one point of clarification. As I understand it, and correct me if I've got this wrong, I think that this is a relatively recent proposed change, isn't it, that the council has put forward. So far as I know, we don't yet know what Mr. Birkinshaw and I forgot the name of the other inspector, what my colleagues there think about all of this, do we?
We certainly, we don't yet, because those hearings, as I think you probably picked up, are to begin the week after next.
Yeah.
I think it's Miss Hockenhall, isn't it?
Thank you. Just don't tell her that I forgot her name.
It's all right, this isn't being recorded, sir, so nobody will know.
Thank you. Ms. Cottier.
I thought that these, yes, thank you. I thought these were being live streamed and then going to be made publicly available for everybody, like the last hearing.
They are. I think that Mr. Bedford was being sarcastic.
Good. Okay. Well, that's good. So about the affordability issue, I wanted to say that the most overall affordable option is in within the Luton area itself, in the form of all of the empty commercial properties that the council, Luton Council, are proactively seeking and actually changing into accommodation of all different types and sizes. And these sites are very numerous, and I think the councillors here can testify to that. And these tend to be within the price range of the Luton demographic. And these are more likely to supply and be in the right locations for people who live and work in the town. And because also they are usually apartments, and we've had, but that doesn't necessarily mean only 2-bed apartments, that could be 3 or 4-bed. There are all of these empty brownfield sites that amongst them are these empty office spaces. And these are well underway, and these are going to form a portion of the windfall table that I'm going to make, but they are being promoted and then produced at a rapid rate. And one of the things that I think could happen with this is that because it's the principle of regeneration is not a new one, and the government was already, as was the MPPF, saying that empty properties should be utilised fully. We have so much possibility there. And if affordability is truly the reason why this point is being brought up, that would truly be the most economical route for people who need affordable housing to get access to it quickly, because the framework of the building is already there, and they just have to go in and change the partitions and decorate it, and they're laying there not used, they're empty. We all know locally, those of us who live in the area can say where they are. But when I looked at the commercial property, the listings that I included in my appendix, there were 2 sizes. There were those with rateable value above 35,000 and those with rateable value under, those with rateable value under 15,000 and those with rateable value over £15,000. So there were a range of sizes, and altogether, I felt a sense of excitement because I thought somebody could come in and regenerate the centre of the town, and they could get involved with this. Communities, because in the local plan it talks about neighbourhood planning, and they encourage groups that are concerned about regeneration to become involved in neighbourhood planning. We all know each other in this area, were really excited to get involved with that, and to people who genuinely do want to see climate emissions be reversed. And these aren't just sort of environmental campaign groups. There are so many people that we just know through, some of them are part of different groups or Friends of the Earth, or some of them are Green Party members, some of them are just people, locals that live in the area, but altogether that we were all talking about forming a large group, and we approached the council in relation to this, and we set up a climate change assembly, a citizens assembly group, and we were discussing about regeneration as being the central principle. And I took the initiative to go and contact locality and talk to them about initiating a neighbourhood forum, and they advised me, and that occurred last year. And I've been rather busy and with my life and other things, So that got put on the back burner, but I did actually start the initiation process. And I know so many people that would be happy to get involved with that. So all of these empty properties needn't be a lonely, uninspired project that the council have to undertake alone. There are so many people in this area that would really like to see those become lived in, and you know, to be changed into affordable housing. And the design, the neighbourhood forum technical packages that get delivered to these neighbourhood forums for free contain things such as design codes, technical packages for design codes. And you once asked, I think it was either in a hearing or in a response to one of our statements before, when I think it was me that brought up the matter of green roofing. You asked, what's green roofs? What's a green roof? And you would be absolutely amazed to see some of the projects that are going on around the world, as well as here, that are taking a really creative approach to incorporating green carbon absorbing features, not only into the buildings, not only on top of the structures, such as green roofing, but there's a wall in London that it's actually made of some special kind of plant matter, and it absorbs a huge quantity of carbon gas just standing there behind some bench. And there are so many examples, not only around the world, but here in this country, where you can incorporate that. And from my point of view, I think covering an already existing structure in the middle of a really, what's becoming quite a depleted urban environment, just brings back to where I think this town would like to go as a community themselves. And it sort of fits in with the brand about being a town of the arts, that Luton tried to become a city of the arts recently. And it was a bit mocked, but to be fair to them, they want to have a vision. And they even went so far as to do a mirage in the centre of town next to the hat factory, which is going to be actually one of my empty property lists, not my empty, but my windfall site lists, where they had a big mirage saying "Dare to Dream" on it, dare to dream. And it was like, really, I laughed at it when I first saw it, because I thought, oh, what, dare to dream in Luton? I don't think so. But then I suddenly felt inspired, and I thought, yes, why not? Why not? If we it's not so difficult to green up a town if there's money and the will to do it behind it. So I just don't see any reason why these empty properties should just sit there becoming sad and derelict. I think it would be a great opportunity to do that together, even with developers, rather than fighting each other over these types of plans, to work together. And I know that may seem strange as we sit there here in this situation, but I do believe really that's the way forward. And I'm now going to not probably say anything else for the rest of things. I'm going to start doing my windfall data list, and I want to just get cracking on it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cotier.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Mr. Dorman.
I'm humbled by my green lack of credentials, I have to say. But just going back to the table 1 of ED 207 and the references to those allocations that are close to Luton. I noticed that the growth options study deliberately included in its study not just locations close to Luton, but locations with good transport access. In fact, well, it's more like just transport access. It was high quality public transport accessibility. So that doesn't even include roads, but we'll take that as read. And your question 24B also specifically points out that, does the growth study identify alternative growth relations with strong links to Luton, either through physical proximity or high quality transport public transport accessibility. So this seems to be getting lost in the desire by those promoting the sites closest to Luton to indicate that sites that are a bit further afield may not be considered. Obviously, we've added up, or other people added up the Houghton Regis sites in North Luton, and came to a number of 6259, which is less than the proportion of the unmet housing need that North Herts needs to provide. But if you look down that list, I mean, Barton-le-Clay is only just up the A6 from Luton. There's a very regular bus and coach service from there into Luton. Caddington Park is very close, if my geography is correct, to the west of Luton site. Flitwick is on the Thameslink rail line, which is Luton, Grave, Harlingen, 3 or 4 stops away. Ditto the land to the west of Midland mainline railway. I'm not entirely sure where it is, but it's right next to the railway line for sure, or the station. If you add those in, you get to 7768, which is more than enough. Now, I appreciate we're probably talking semantics here, but I put it to you that it's not so simple as just to look at sites that are very close to and just ignore those that are further afield, when specifically you've asked for, and the growth option study asked for, excellent transport, public transport accessibility. So if you include those in, there's a reasonable chance that the CBC allocation will meet the 7350 from Luton, if we assume that that 7350 is a realistic number by virtue of the Luton housing programme. Thank you.
Mr. Boyd.
Thank you, sir. Just if I may, just return to your question, Dee, and your question particularly in relation to, are there any realistic alternative options with a reasonable likelihood of being delivered for addressing Luton's unmet needs? Obviously, around the table, it seems as though indirectly or directly, depends what your point of view is, that the west of Luton isn't seen to be a realistic alternative option. I've already made our point clear that we don't see us as an alternative to west of Luton, and I maintain that position. I think we need east and west. But I feel, sir, that, again, it's my point on North Herts' reliability on the central beds evidence, which I'm really concerned about more than anything. And in this respect, clearly, paragraphs 44 through to 45 of their LD 173 document, clearly shows that North Herts have relied upon the evidence central beds are putting against west of Luton in coming to their judgments about the availability of alternatives. So the part of the concern I have, and obviously I understand that the growth option study was one study, and there are other evidence-based documents such as the SHLA, which I think has been referred to, is relied on as well. But when you look at the SHLA, Sarah, and it's interesting that sorry, I'll just get this paper in front of me, the White Peak Planning hearing statement to this matter 24 provides you with some extracts from the SHLA 2018 at appendix, I think it's appendix 2 of their hearing statement. And obviously I've looked at this before, I've looked at it many times before. In relation to west of Luton, it divides it into 2 areas. Again, this northern area, which is referenced NLP 174, I referred to that earlier, sir, and NLP 436, which actually is the north and the south area together. And this is the calibre of the evidence that Central Beds are relying on, and of course now in turn North Herts are relying on, in relation to the northern part of the west of Luton site, the full reason, as it's called, or the fail reason for failing the assessment, is that the northern part is unsuitable because it would give rise to coalescence with Luton. Even though this is clearly an urban extension of Luton, it gives rise to coalescence with Luton. And that's all it says. And in relation to the whole site, which obviously incorporates the southern part I've suggested earlier, we've put forward as a safeguarded site for future growth. It says, not an appropriate location for development due to aircraft noise associated with Luton Airport. So that's why it was ruled out. And then there's a document which LLA produced, a vision document for the 2020-2050. So that's sort of obviously a long way into the future. So it's obviously an aspirational document. They cite that as being a reason why the west of Luton wasn't an appropriate location. Now, so I obviously appreciate you're not examining west of Luton today, but clearly...
I'm not. Just for my clarification, the sites that we're referring to as west of Luton is
yes, sir.
The west of Luton, isn't it?
Yeah, and it comes back to my point, sir. I mean, you can't rule out west of Luton being a reasonable alternative, but alternative not either or. You understand, I've tried to make that point clear earlier on today. And the other point I'd make, sir, is that this is all for the two inspectors at Central Beds examination to resolve. It's not really for North Herts to resolve and to present evidence to you and we're not a reasonable alternative. That's what I would say. So I do feel quite strongly about this, that you take away a clear message from me, sir, that these matters still need to be resolved through the Central Beds examination. The final thing I'll say, sir, and it really just is linked into Mr. Dorman's point about high quality public transport accessibility. And so you don't need to turn up figure 2.2 again from the growth option study, but if you do have it handy, that might be useful, just to give you a record.
Can you remind me which page that's on?
It is after page
1, 2.
Yes, it's page 6.
Yes.
Yeah, is that the map on page 6?
Yes, sir. Yes, the potential growth locations map.
Yeah.
Yeah. The point I'd like to make, sir, is you can see quite clearly the west of Luton location on the map. It's got numbers L24.
I've seen it several times today.
Yep.
No, I can't for the life of me find it.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, if you look at
yes, I'm with you. Here we are.
you got it. Good. Okay. If you just look to the very northern tip of the site or the location, and what you'll see there, sir, if you look back to the key, you see these orange dots on the key and on the map, and it says guided busway stops.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Is that, sir? That's the Luton Dunstable guided busway, which traverses.
Sorry, can you bear with me?
He's trying to pay him advance.
Sorry, can you just bear with me a moment?
While saying the inspection and can't do anything about it.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Guided busway.
Yes, guided busway, sir. Traverses the conurbation.
That's exactly the very reason I've located Temple Key House, to avoid interruptions of that sort. Anyway,
Right.
guided bus.
Guided busway traverses the conurbation east to west, connects Dunstable Town Centre to Luton Town Centre to Luton Parkway, and it's now being extended into Luton Airport at the moment. So it's a significant high quality public transport route. And if you look at the west of Luton location compared to the north of Luton location and compared to the east of Luton location, those being the three locations where clearly best placed to meet the unmet needs of Luton. I think we're sort of agreed with that general principle. West of Luton is the only site that can actually take advantage from that high quality public transport route. So yet again, sir, I say west of Luton is clearly a reasonable alternative. Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. It was only to urge a note of caution in the light of Mr. Boyd's comments. His hearing statement clearly indicates that the question of west of Luton is a matter that is for the Central Bedfordshire examination. That is set out emphatic, and I see Mr. Boyd is nodding. Whilst at the same time, he urges upon you to accept judgments being made, comparative judgments with the east of Luton and indeed the north of Luton site. That is not appropriate. It's inconsistent with his position, and it really demonstrates the position, sir, that you are in, which is the point Mr. Bedford referred to some time ago, is that the question as to the choice of sites within Central Bedfordshire is a matter that's being examined through that process. And the difficulty is, sir, that you are being presented with one view, one assertion. Indeed, we haven't at this stage sought to respond directly to the claimed advantages of west of Luton on the basis that Mr. Boyd said he accepts that east of Luton is necessary. But if Mr. Boyd continues to claim advantages over east of Luton, we will be in the position where we find it unacceptable that you're going away with only one side of the facts. So, for example, where Mr. Boyd refers to certain factual matters, his statement is actually somewhat out of date. He hasn't drawn your attention to those parts of his statement that are out of date, and I don't think that's very fair. So with great respect to Mr. Boyd, I would urge him to take this particular matter no further, and I would urge you, sir, to apply huge caution in accepting assertions that he makes on the basis that he's already indicated to you, sir, that there's nothing you can do about it.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Ms. Cotier. Mr. Smith, your hand is up. Did you actually want to come in at this point?
No, it was just to pick up on what Mr. Boyd was saying. I just wanted to emphasise to you, sir, and point you towards paragraph 42 of our ED 173, which is kind of the preface to the section where we talk about west of Luton and what's going on in Central Bedfordshire, and just the final sentence of that, which is that the below is presented without prejudice to any future representations this council may seek to make to that examination, Central Bedfordshire's, and it doesn't necessarily represent either an endorsement or criticism of the relevant parts. What we're trying to do, sir, is give you an even-handed presentation of the facts as they currently stand. North Hertfordshire District Council is not in this examination to try and express a view on west of Luton one way or another. We are setting out the factual position, and clearly Mr. Boyd is perhaps slightly unhappy with his perception of the way the council's presented that case. But just to emphasise to you, as I say, we're seeking to neither endorse nor criticise what's gone on in Central Bed's plan. We're just saying that is the situation.
Ms. Cotier.
Yeah, there was a matter regarding the review time period and the legality of the local plan that has been committed to early review but has failed to undertake it, and how that would apply to our situation with Luton and its policies. Because the inspector for Luton's local plan passed the plan on condition of there being an early review. That was one of the conditions in the first paragraph of his report that permitted it to be adopted. And the early review issue came up either yesterday or I think it came up the day before yesterday. Or the day before, it doesn't really matter, it came up one of those, that it needed to be done within a certain time period. And I think somebody said 3 years, but 5 years in the case of normal time period for review. But now we're 1 week away from the end of November. We would be then outside the 3-year early review time period. So I want to know, really, is there any type of penalty, or does it, not penalty, but does it become more flexible if it goes past its sell-by date, basically? Or is it still as robust as has it become a document that carries the same legal weight as if it were still in date? They've allowed it to effectively expire beyond the inspector's conditions. They've broken the conditions for having allowed it to be adopted.
Yes, we're talking about Luton's plan here, and that is therefore not something that I could comment on.
Not just Luton's plan, but any plan, because if we are talking, because yesterday, the day before yesterday, Mr. Bedford said that the adopted local plan was enshrined and the numbers within it were enshrined, and that we should take those very seriously. And this was, and the numbers in the policies. And then I replied that I felt also we should take equally serious any contradicting numbers in the plan. But we may be talking about something that has effectively expired anyway, or has it? I should think it hasn't completely expired, but I'm sure there is some kind of issue surrounding that they have not done their early review.
It still remains the statutory development plan for Luton. Beyond that, I am not able to comment.
Okay.
That would in effect amount to me giving you planning advice, and I'm specifically precluded from doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, anyway, we all know it's occurred. That's the main thing. So, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.
Mr. Dorman.
Thank you again, Mr. Barclay. I just wanted to, a couple of minor things. Mr. Boyd mentions the guided busway from west of Luton. I think, let me just repeat, the guided busway, according to the Northampton Regis plans and sites and maps, also is planned for the guided busway. So it's not just west of Luton to Dunstable, it's going further northwest, I think it is, into Northampton Regis sites. And secondly, in return to the point about public transport accessibility, Barton is 5 miles from Luton, 18 minutes by bus. Flitwick is 9 miles from Luton, 12 minutes by train. Harlington, 7 miles from Luton, 11 minutes by train. Westerning, a bit more remote, but 8 miles away, and it's 21 minutes by bus and train. So if the assumption is that people who, if Luton's unmet needs is being met by people who need to travel to Luton, and that's a big if, I suspect, it's not that difficult with those 4 locations alone to get there using public transport. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Griffiths.
So yes, just to gather a few of my thoughts as well, if I may. Clearly, Mr. Dornan and I are together on this, that we support west of Luton and support Mr. Boyd's case and the evidence that he's provided. It also, I think your decision is going to be dependent quite a lot on that statement of common ground and the degree to which the needs of Luton are now being met within Luton, and needs for affordable housing, as Ms. Cottier has shown. And we've also just touched upon the point about sites which may not be adjacent to Luton, but certainly do have those good public transport connections. And Mr. Dornan has just referred to that as railway enthusiast. I would also endorse that. But then it comes down to Greenbelt. And I think the Greenbelt case here needs to be made very, very strongly. And the fact that the Greenbelt to the east of Luton there would be significant harm done to the Greenbelt compared to the sites to the west of Luton. And we've made that point before, but I just ask you to bear that in mind. And also, I think in all this, we've just talked about reviews and rolling forward of plans. And I refer you back to my comment yesterday from a sustainability point of view, that precautionary principle. And what Councillor Mose, I think it was, said this morning, once it's gone, it's gone. Oh, it's Mr. Brindley, wasn't it? Said, once it's gone, it's gone. And I think this issue needs to come back, I think, to that early review. And the relationship also across the border between Central Beds and Luton, because Luton are about to embark on their review also. So if in doubt, sir, going back to your professional judgment on this, I think if in doubt, you must find these allocations on sound. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wynne.
Yes, thank you, sir. I just wanted to make a very brief point, really. We're continuing to hear what I, as a non-legal person, consider to be somewhat ping-pong related. We have twos and fros going through. We're losing sight of the reality. If you actually go across to the east of Luton and you either look at a map or you physically go over there, and I live on the edge of Luton, over near the North Herts sites themselves, if you actually go and look, the transport difficulties of actually having that as meeting a Luton housing shortfall is horrendous. It bears no relation whatsoever to reality of being useful in meeting of Luton's housing need. And Luton itself as a town, we are continuously putting forward more and more properties. I accept that the mix of properties that have been approved recently have been wrong. There's been too many 1 or 2 bedroom flats being approved. That is actively being opposed now by the planning committee. And if you were to go to any of the Luton Planning Committee meetings, you would find that there is a huge groundswell against that so as to get the mix of properties right. But east of Luton is not, quite frankly, if you look at it from a practical point of view, going to meet a housing need for Luton. That's all, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Brindley.
Thank you, sir. Yes, I'd just like to close my contribution, I think, probably for today. So it is my belief that the sites east of Luton are included in the plan mainly for political reasons. It's to appease Central Beds and Luton, not for sound planning reasons. And I believe that these political reasons do not justify the exceptional circumstances required to release and lose forever this land from Greenbelt. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other points on A to D before I take a break and pick up on E on our return, which I suspect will be a relatively short discussion? Okay, very good. In which case then, as I have done, Mr. Smith, I'm going to give the council the opportunity, at least, to reply should it wish to take it up. But you can think about that whilst we have a short break. So I make it 15:11. I adjourn the hearing to resume at 3:35. Thank you. Okay, it is now 3:35, and so I resume the hearing. As promised before the break, Mr. Smith, are there any points that the council wants to reply to?
No, sir, I don't think there are at this stage. We've set out our case to you, and obviously we'll provide the note as requested with the updated numbers, but we're happy to move on.
Okay, thank you for that. In which case then I will go to issue E. Sustainability appraisal doesn't consider land or sites outside of North Hertfordshire, should it? Mr. Smith, in a word.
No.
And why is that?
It's outside the jurisdiction of the sustainability appraisal, which is limited to consideration of alternative options within the plans area. And as a legal point, I don't know if Ms. Ormsby wants to say any more than that.
So no, it's the point that we've made to you in our document 173C. The regulations require us to look at sustainability appraisal in the light of the geographical scope of the plan, which of course is the administrative area of North Herts, and that's what we've done. And we're not required to do anything more than that. But we accept that the exceptional circumstances point goes wider than that, but not the sustainability appraisal point.
Thank you very much. Is anyone here to say anything on that?
I'm not aware that there are any legal points that are being made to suggest that we're wrong on that. So
I certainly can't bring any to mind. Mr. Dorman. You're right. You're on mute, Mr. Dorman. You're muted, Mr. Dorman.
Sorry. Oh.
You weren't, and now you are again. Yeah, you're muted, Mr. Dorman. Mr. Dorman, you're still muted. That's it.
Is that it?
It is, yeah, that's it.
Okay. Something went wrong there. In principle, yes, I think the SA should consider other possibilities. There is no doubt that opportunities exist from within the major parts of the Luton HMA outside North Herts to provide sites for housing to help meet Luton's unmet needs. I think it's wrong, totally wrong, that such a narrow strip of land as the area around Cockenhoe, with no more than 200 homes straddling across these three small villages in a strongly rural and, as we've heard, hugely significant greenbelt area, should have to bear such a disproportionate burden as is being foisted on it by NHDC. Indeed, I would go as far as to say the very fact that this area is included in the Luton HMA in the first place is deeply disturbing, given its small population, which in terms of Luton itself and any economic impact it might have is insignificant statistically.
Yeah, I have let discussion on the other issues sort of bleed into one another, but I've deliberately put this question at the end because it's quite a discrete and self-contained question. So I'd ask that people's replies to it are also discrete and stick explicitly to the question put, which is about the sustainability appraisal.
On that basis, I'll say no more, Mr. Barclay. Thank you.
But I know the other points that you're making, and I would say, you've made those before, and I have them in my mind. Mr. Griffiths.
Thank you. So just to confirm this, I've been involved with so many of these sustainability appraisals in the past. Mr. Smith is absolutely right. We've been handling the same issue at the moment with Welwyn Hatfield local plan, and the sustainability appraisal considerations there are solely for the area within the borough of Welwyn Hatfield. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Is there anything else then before I adjourn for the day? Any housekeeping or other matters that I need to know about? Very good, marvellous. Okay, in which case then it's now 3:41. I adjourn the hearing to resume on Tuesday, the 1st of December at 9 o'clock on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you.